is the state of social media and journalism today. A lot seems to be changing with algorithms and the platforms themselves.
Yeah, the state of social media in general and in terms of journalism is constantly in flux. Like you said, I teach a course in digital and social media, and if you're a college professor, one of the nice things is if you can do it for a certain amount of time, you can kind of just like reuse lesson plans and stuff every semester. I don't get to do that because if I tried to teach Twitter the same way a year ago that I'm teaching it today, so many things have changed, so many things are different. So the thing about social media is, and I always say this to my students, is there's good and bad. There's good and bad to everything, right? So there's good and bad to social media. There's the fact that there's a lot of contentiousness on social media, there's a lot of misinformation, all sorts of stuff. But at the same time, the ability to reach a larger audience and connect with people that you wouldn't have been able to do even 15, 20 years ago is huge. So social media and journalism, social media is a key part of journalism. I polled my class the other day, and I said, where do you guys get your news? And no one's getting it from newspapers, right, at least in the college student range. They weren't even really watching it on TV. It's all social media. It was a combination of, I get my news from Twitter, I get my news from Instagram, I get my news from TikTok. I don't know how people are getting news from TikTok, but apparently it's happening, so it's something we gotta be aware of. But that's where they're getting their news. So if you're going to be reaching out to the younger generation, and I even think of like, my parents, my in-laws, Facebook is where they go for their information. If you try to tell a 20-year-old that a lot of people are on Facebook, they're going to tell you not, no one's on Facebook. But the fact of the matter is, everyone is still on Facebook. So between those platforms, that's where people are looking to for news. So if you're a budding journalist, you need to understand how to use social media. And as far as the state of social media, like you said, it's changing every day. Twitter, like I said, is not what it was a year ago. TikTok is constantly on the verge of, is it going to get banned? Is it going to be huge? I know we'll talk about all this stuff, but it's a lot to keep track of all the time.
I was going to say, I mean, what role, is there still a reliable role for Twitter and TikTok these days?
So the thing about Twitter, and full disclosure, Twitter is my favorite social media platform. It works on all. I love it. I've been on it since 2009. I joined it when I was at Marvel, and I was able to get a pretty big following there that I maintained, even though I'm just a civilian now. But I've been using Twitter for years and years. I love the conversational aspect. I love the way you can spread information. Like you said, it's been rough for the last year or so. Some changes have been made to Twitter. A lot of people are turning off of it. But something I said in class the other day is people who are digital media DOTs, it's funny because you think of digital media as being kind of the background, the foreground of change. So you think people use change. If you try to expose someone to change in their digital or social media, they're not happy. We're not creatures of change. We're creatures of habit. So people who have been using Twitter for years and years, even though I can't tell you how many messages I've seen from colleagues and friends who've been on Twitter for years and years in the last 8 months who've been like, I'm leaving, and then they're back a week later. So the fact of the matter is, Twitter is where a lot of people go for news. It's what a lot of journalists use to deliver their message. Until there is a viable alternative to Twitter, which as of right now, there's not. There have been a lot of attempts. I think Blue Sky from Jack Dorsey is the latest attempt, and that may or may not work. I know that.
Do you have an invite to Blue Sky?
I do not have an invite to Blue Sky. I lost my Twitter verification, and I didn't have an invite to Blue Sky, so it's been a very rough month for me, self-esteem-wise. Until one of these is established and takes hold, until Meta comes out with a Twitter replacement, which I know they're talking about, Twitter's still going to be viable until it burns to the ground. And I don't see it going anywhere anytime soon. It might shift. I don't see it going the way of, say, MySpace, which I'm teaching a class on MySpace today. Always exciting trying to teach 20-year-olds about MySpace. But it's, I don't think Twitter is going away anytime soon until we have something to replace it. And it's going to take a lot to find something to replace it.
Talk to me a little bit about TikTok as a social media tool for journalists. I mean, at our cocktail hour last night, I heard of a couple reporters here who were getting into TikTok to promote their stories. I'm a hotel reporter, and like, do I need to get on TikTok and do like hotel brands as Real Housewives? Like, how do you approach it to drive more eyeballs to your stories?
It's interesting. I mean, TikTok's an emerging platform. When I started teaching my digital media course a few years ago, TikTok was just burgeoning, and it seemed like it was going to get banned by the government. So I was like, all right, we don't need to really worry about this. And when it comes to the Rebel Media Group, we weren't really doing anything on TikTok, just because it was kind of a wait and see type of thing. Is this going to stick around? I can say 2 years later, TikTok is sticking around. It's a big deal. Right now, something important to note, whether you're a journalist, whether you're a real estate agent, etc., is like, there's a lot of platforms out there. Maybe not every platform is for you. The worst thing you can do is commit to using 8 different platforms and then discover that 3 of them are not where you want to be. It's important to know your audience. Who are you trying to reach? If I'm trying to reach younger people, which I often am, I gotta be on Instagram, I have to be on TikTok. If I'm trying to do anything involving money, like people who have money, Facebook. Stay on Facebook, because that's where people with disposable income are. The younger people who have a lot of money to spend aren't typically on Instagram or TikTok. But the fact of the matter is, these are still people you want to reach, because in a few years they're going to be, if they're not your target audience right now, they're going to be your target audience in a few years. And as far as journalism on TikTok, I think people who are savvy have found ways to use it. The old expression in digital marketing is, words are great, pictures are better, videos are the best. So if you can find a way to do video content, and I know we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but if you can find a way to produce video content, you are able to reach a broader audience than if you're just posting long messages or blogs, if you're using LinkedIn to use the blog function. So the fact of the matter is, right now, I don't know that TikTok is huge for journalism, but I think it's on the verge, and it's going to happen very quickly.
And let's talk about, let's move to video, because I mean, we're doing that at work the other day. I'm going through video training, and I mean, what is the video strategy that we should be using? I mean, is it just kind of looking at the camera? Are we going to have to do a dance and talk about earnings reports? I just am kind of, from personal experience, It was a bit of a hill to overcome. I'm sweating buckets the first time I did it. So how do we do
No,
it?
you'll be fine. You're great. Listen. You got to learn to know how to do video. I used to say at Marvel, when I was there, that I worked in the digital media realm, the new media realm, but I'm traditionally a writer. I have an English degree, I have a journalism background. So for me, trying to learn how to code a website was something that I was never going to be fully able to do. But I felt that it was necessary for me to understand enough about the creation of a website so that I could be useful to the people who are. I view video the same way. You might not necessarily be a video content creator, but if you're going to be working with people, because you're probably going to end up hiring people who are going to help you with this, someone who's savvy, or you're going to find someone who's already on your staff who knows what they're doing with video. It's important for you to understand the basic principles of video. Do you need to do a TikTok dance to promote your earnings report? Probably not. I'd like to see it if you do. Please send it to me. Anyone who's doing TikTok dances for your earnings reports, I would love to see that. I will play it for my entire class forever. But no, it's just a matter of what's your message, what's your goal, and how can you translate it to video. Anything you write can be translated to video. It's just a matter of how do you create a compelling visual to the audience. It's the same challenge we face on Instagram. The problem with Instagram is I can't just post a block of text. I have to find a picture to go with it. But what I've learned over the last few years of running the media group and also teaching digital media is I used to think, man, this is impossible. I can't be on Instagram. I don't have pictures for everything. There's a graphic for everything. You create it if it doesn't exist. There are great visuals. There's all sorts of great stuff. So if you can create visually compelling videos, that's the challenge, is you have the information. The information stays the same. The information doesn't change regardless of the platform you're using to deliver it. The information remains the same. It's just a matter of how am I conveying the information. So you need to do a dance? I don't think so. Maybe we'll see. It might happen in a few years. But I think it's more just, all right, if someone's going to be staring at me for, even 30 seconds, how do I make that compelling?
How often should we be posting, especially, if things are migrating to video, that's a bit more of an undertaking than just taking a photo of Caesar's Palace and throwing it up on Instagram. So
the cadence I use for most of my clients is I try to get posts up at least 3 times a week, but there are other people who want to post something every day. It also depends on the platform. Going back to Twitter, you don't post on Twitter 3 times a week. If you're using Twitter, and this is why I always caution people about Twitter, even before all the controversy of the last 8 months, I was like, if you don't have the time and resources to be on Twitter, not 24/7, but so you're checking in every few hours, there's no point being on Twitter. It's a dead account. I would advise most of my clients to use Twitter almost as like a customer service channel. Maybe you post your information on Instagram or TikTok or LinkedIn or Facebook, but Twitter is where you go to address people's concerns. If you have a concern, reach out to me on Twitter. With something like TikTok or Instagram Reels or Instagram in general, I find a few times a week is a good cadence. You don't want to overwhelm people. And also, if you do a few times a week, you mentioned the algorithm earlier. The problem is if you don't post often enough, you're going to be forgotten by the algorithm. The algorithm rewards participation. So you may even want to say, like, maybe post 3 times a week, but you want to be checking up on your posts daily, more than 1 time a day. That's the whole thing about social media. Social media is a conversational platform. It's not a bullet board. So I would describe it. You don't just post something, leave it, come back in a week, see what people say. You have to constantly be interacting and answering people. So it's important to be active on social media.
So I feel like a lot of our editors tell us don't read the comments, don't engage in the comments, but are you saying we should engage in the comments on social media?
All right, so here's the trick, is engage with positive comments. By positive, but let me explain what I mean by positive. By positive, I don't mean just comments that are saying like, hey man, you're doing a great job, everything's awesome. What I'm saying is positive is, hey, you're doing a great job, or hey, here's something I think you could be doing different, but it's a constructive criticism. Don't engage, when they say don't engage with the comments, I disagree with that because I think you don't engage with trolls. You don't get locked into an argument that's going to take up all your time. But if you're on social media, yeah, absolutely. The comments are where you're going to, and again, also, the algorithm rewards interaction. So if someone's commenting on your post, you're responding to them, they're responding to you, you have a back and forth conversation, the algorithm is going to surface your content. So there's no reason not to be involved in the conversation. Yes, you can get dragged off, arguing with someone who's never going to change their mind about how you're the worst person in the world. Don't engage in that, just ignore it, or you can say like, thanks for your input. But there's so many other areas where you can be. So I think saying ignore the comments, no offense to your editors, I think saying ignore the comments is too broad a generalization. It's not the way to do social media, in my opinion. You gotta be interactive.
One platform we haven't brought up is actually my favorite, is LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I'm 34, but people on my news team are younger than me, and I may as well be 304. It's completely obsolete, but what's kind of they have LinkedIn for journalists.
I've seen LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn has huge potential, and I think it's getting bigger and better every day. When I started working at Rebel Media Group, we didn't do any LinkedIn marketing, and now I think probably more than 75% of our clients are on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's been really good. The thing about LinkedIn is crazy. It's been around forever. People don't know that. They think LinkedIn's a relatively recent innovation, but it's actually been around longer than a lot of the other social media platforms. It's been around since the early 2000s. And for a while, it was, you went on LinkedIn for one reason, if you're looking for a job, right? Now that has changed. LinkedIn has become a community. It's become a place where you're interacting with your coworkers, you're networking with other people in your industry, and you're spending a lot of things. And to your point, journalists are starting to utilize LinkedIn. Their blogging function has improved, and just like being able to post content. So I don't think you can sleep on LinkedIn now. And I'm seeing that, like you said, I'm in my 40s and I'm teaching 20-year-olds, so I very much understand your dilemma of being the old man in the room. But I think that the more we can get people on this platform, it's important. It's a vital part of the social media landscape. And I gotta give a lot of credit to LinkedIn, because I think a few years ago, they were not someone I thought of when I thought of like the key social media platforms you need to market on. And I would say now, if you don't have a LinkedIn strategy, you're probably gonna get left behind, because it's a great place to reach out to people.
If you're starting out, if you're here today, you are not on any of the platforms. I know you said earlier, know your audience, but what would be your kind of intro to social media as sort of the smart guide for journalists getting in there?
It's a great question. I think that, well, here's the difference. If you're working on a business, then you're going to want to do a lot more research into target audience, demographics, who are we trying to reach, and you only have so many resources, so you're only going to be on maybe you're only on 2 or 3 platforms. If you are going in as an individual, try everything. Like, if you are just like, because I always say, even though one of the things I caution my students on is I'm like, just because you're able to manage your own social media does not mean you're able to manage a business's social media. They're 2 very different things. However, if you're not on all the platforms, you are not going to be the best person to be. I work with a brilliant woman who's in New York who helps me run Rebel Media Group. And the first thing she does when we get a new student is recruit into Rebel Media Group. She goes, "Are you on Facebook?" They usually say no. My parents are. And then we say, "All right, get on Facebook." Because we want you to, as a marketer, understand how to use Facebook. Now I'm telling people, even if you have no interest in dancing or anything else, get on TikTok. Because you're going to need to learn how to use TikTok. For your personal brand, you should be on as many platforms as you feel comfortable being on. The worst thing you can do is join a platform and then abandon it, because then you have a dead link that people can go to and see that you're not producing. But my advice is, get on as many platforms as you can as you, as a person, even as a journalist. And then when it comes time to actually promote your work, you have an understanding of like, all right, for this business, I need to be on TikTok and Instagram. Okay, for these guys, I need to just focus on Facebook, maybe a little bit of Twitter. But I know how to use all of them. I'm on every platform. And I try to keep up to date on every platform. I joined TikTok reluctantly a few months ago. And I don't post a lot, but I'm on there seeing what's going on. So if I need to do it for a client, I'm savvy. I know how to use it. So I say join every platform you can as an individual, and then figure out which platforms are valuable to you as a marketer, but as a journalist also, where can I best deliver my news?
Not to sound like Katie Couric with a what is internet moment.
Yeah.
But, I mean, for TikTok in particular, I think we've all kind of gathered hashtags, et cetera, but I mean, how are you getting visibility on TikTok? Because I think that's the one where everyone's just like, how do you have that moment?
So the thing about TikTok is it's the one that most people are enjoying right now. It's also the most challenging for marketers and for journalists. Because the TikTok algorithm is fantastic in that they will send you the most stuff you are most interested in. It's a brilliant algorithm. It really knows how to do it. And the thing about brilliant algorithms is they're hard to beat for marketing. Honestly, the best thing you can do to get noticed on TikTok is the thing you can do on any social media platform. That's consistency. If you are consistently posting content, and I'm not talking about posting, garbage, but if you are taking the time to 3 times a week produce a quality piece of content and you keep going, I always say, I teach a class in podcasting, which yes, there are college courses in podcasting. It's an upper level course too, which is wild. But I teach podcasting, and I always say the most important thing to do as a podcaster is not even necessarily being good right off the bat, it's being there, right? Even though we live in a world where people are used to streaming and binge watching, and I'm gonna watch whenever I want, there's still this like deep human connection to appointment viewing or listening. So if you say, I'm gonna give you a new episode of my podcast every Wednesday at 3 p.m., people appreciate that. They appreciate that it's always something to commit. It's not all that different for TikTok. If I'm going to consistently give you something, and that's the other thing about all social media, but I think TikTok works especially, is what are you giving people? It's one thing just to post a meme or post a funny video, but especially if you're in the professional realm, what service am I providing, right? So what's my value proposition? If you can figure that out, again, I'm full confession, I have not fully figured out TikTok yet, at all. But what I'm seeing is the stuff that's consistent, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok. Be consistent and give value. If you can do those 2 things, I think you'll be okay.
Do you get dinged if you kind of double dip, like if you post a TikTok to Reels or vice versa?
No.
Because I've heard a couple of people say, oh, you have to post like originally to TikTok or originally to Reels to get. Is that just
No, so my wife recently started a business, and they're on Reels as well as TikTok, and they're repurposing. The biggest thing you'll have to do is there are different, and the most annoying thing you'll have to do is there are different copyright rules on each, so you might be able to use a song on the Reel that you can't then use on the TikTok. I'll say this, man, I'm kind of split on it, because I have, one of the big things I've always said to my students is, I don't want you, if we're doing a campaign, we're doing a post, we're bringing a post for someone for Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, I don't want you to just copy and paste the same text and graphics to each platform, because each platform is different. Facebook has an older demographic, Instagram is more visually dynamic, Twitter is more conversational. So whatever platform you're focusing on, you should find the best individual voice for them. That said, TikTok and Instagram Reels, like look, Instagram created Reels because TikTok was successful. That's a big thing about Instagram. What you'll notice is Instagram, when they notice something successful, sorry, I'm just looking around and seeing actually people at Instagram. The thing about Instagram is a lot of younger people call it the copycat app, because when Snapchat was doing stories, Instagram came and started doing stories. When YouTube was dominant, they tried to do IGTV. Didn't really succeed, but they tried it. With Reels, Reels is a direct response to TikTok. So you're going to see audience overlap on Reels and TikTok. So that's like the one exception to the rule where I'm like, if you're posting on Reels and TikTok, there's no reason not to repurpose. The other thing about TikTok that's great is they encourage you to share their content elsewhere. They make it as easy as possible. This is not the typical behavior of a social media platform. Usually a social media platform wants to capture you and keep you in one place, but TikTok, for whatever reason, has made it very easy to take a video you make on TikTok and share it everywhere else. And while that's the case, because I bet it won't always be the case, we should take advantage of that. Yeah. So if you're creating TikTok content, repurpose it wherever else you can.
Well, speaking of Instagram as a copycat app, I mean, you mentioned earlier, and I think we all read the Bloomberg story that Meta's working on a potential Twitter. I mean, is there a sense that that would be its own app, or I mean, is it just another case of Instagram?
I don't see how, just having used Instagram for a while now, I don't see how Instagram could really fill the void that Twitter, and not that there's a void, Twitter's still here, but I don't see Instagram being able to become the new Twitter. Instagram has been able to successfully copy Snapchat and TikTok, but I think just look at IGTV as the use case. Instagram tried to become a long-form video site with IGTV. It didn't work because that's not what people were using Instagram for. So could Instagram make a pitch to try to be a Twitter replacement? Maybe. I just don't buy that people are on Instagram to use it as they use Twitter. I do think the idea of Meta coming in and creating a Twitter, like a Twitter copycat, is very real. It will almost certainly happen. We're going to see a lot, and it's going to be very interesting in the next couple of years, because we're going to see, in the next couple of months, we're going to see a lot of people, whether it's Blue Sky, whether it's Mastodon, Hive Social is big for about 2 seconds. You're going to see a lot of these guys coming along and saying, like, all right, people are migrating off of Twitter, I want to try to gather this. But as of so far, I've yet to see any success, just because, again, going back to one of my initial points, we are creatures of habit, especially when it comes to digital. We want to keep going to the place we've been going to. Like, if I did get an invite to Blue Sky, which would be great, if anyone has one, let me know. If I get an invite to Blue Sky, that would be great, but at the same time, I've been posting on Twitter for 15 years now. I've got a huge follower base, like, not a huge follower base, but because I worked at Marvel, I had a pretty significant...
You can share numbers.
Okay, yeah.
I guess I'm jealous.
No. Well, I mean, I lost my verification, so it's not as big anymore. But yeah, no, I've got a base of 20,000 people on Twitter who I'm talking to. I've tried bringing those 20,000 people over to my Instagram. It has not worked. If I were to join Blue Sky, would I be able to get those 20,000 people over to Blue Sky? Probably not right away, so I have to start from scratch. And that's what I see a lot of people, like I said, because I was at Marvel, I'm still like very much tapped into the comic book industry. And there's a lot of writers and artists with huge followings on Twitter who have tried to migrate over to, tried to go to Mastodon, a Club, tried to go to Hive, and they ended up back on Twitter within 2 weeks because they couldn't bring their audience. It's very hard to train people to jump from one platform to another. Went all the way around. But as far as will there be a Twitter replacement, maybe, but it's going to really, I think it'll take time and probably some even more disastrous moves on Twitter's part than they've made over the last few months.
You raise a really good point about your Marvel audience has stayed with you because I think a lot of us in this room, we've hopped beats from time to time. I used to be a real estate reporter, now I've covered for only hotels, and how do you keep that audience engaged with you? I mean, are you still having to discuss comic books?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I've been a college professor now for 5 years, and the people who follow me on Twitter do not necessarily want to hear how my classes are going. They want to hear what I thought about the new Guardians movie. So yeah, that is important. If you establish one beat, I think it's important. I have been able to, so here's the case in point. I have 2 Instagram accounts. I have my Instagram account, where I have a few hundred people, and then I have my comic book Instagram account, where I have a few thousand people. And I've been able to successfully grow that because I still have that cred in the comics community. If I started an academic Instagram account, probably not going to get a lot of traction for multiple reasons. But yeah, it's tough. It's hard when you establish yourself as doing one thing, trying to pivot over to doing another thing. It's very difficult because again, go back. I'm sorry to keep harping on the same thing, but creatures of habit. So people are following you because they want to hear the latest comic book news. They're not necessarily going to want to hear how your digital media class is going. But the other thing that's important, and I teach this in podcasting as well, is if you build up a certain amount of loyalty, like I always say, I was like, if you start a podcast and you spend your first episode, and you're ostensibly a movie podcast, a movie review podcast, or you're a Golden Knights podcast, if you spend the first 20 minutes of your podcast talking about the fact that your cat was sick, and you had to take them to the pet hospital, you're probably going to lose people because that's not what they tune in for. However, if I'm in episode 100 and I have a loyal audience, they care about what's going on with me because I've earned that loyalty, so I can talk about my cat for a second. I don't actually have a cat. This is a hypothetical situation. I have a dog. But if you have someone listening to you and you've given them quality content for 100 episodes, you can talk about pretty much whatever you want. When we started This Week in Marvel in 2011, we were very laser focused as far as we're just going to talk about Marvel. But over the course of, I was there from 2011 to 2017, 6 years of podcasts. And me and my co-hosts were able to establish kind of a personal relationship with our audience to the point where they wanted to know what was going on with our life. So when my daughter was born, they cared. And that's something you build up on social media as well. If you are delivering quality content for an extended period of time, and again, going back to what I said, consistency, you're delivering consistently, you might be able to get people to try a new venture, right? So if I'm talking about comics for 6 years, and then I'm like, hey guys, I'm doing this academic thing, I would love for you to follow me and listen to me. I'm more likely to get people just because I have a good amount of people. But am I going to get all 20,000? Absolutely not. So it's very hard to start over. I know that went all over the place.
No, because I think that brings up our next point is that personality, that sense of voice. What does ChatGPT and AI do to that? But also, does it make social media strategy null and void? It's just kind of, we've been talking about AI a lot at this conference as well as ChatGPT.
We've been talking a lot about AI in my classes and how people feel about it. It's interesting because I said to my students yesterday, I taught them about, we had a class yesterday on Web 2.0. So Web 2.0 is essentially, you think about the web in terms of eras. 1990s to early 2000s is Web 1.0. And that's just posting static stuff and people looking at it. Web 2.0 is emergence of social media, collaborative tools like Google Docs and things like that. Basically being interactive. Web 2.0 started in the early 2000s, so we're technically still in Web 2.0. People are starting to discuss what is Web 3.0 because it seems like we're on the precipice of it. And a lot of people are saying that's virtual reality and it's artificial intelligence. Those are the two hallmarks of what we're going to make up Web 3.0. When I talk to my students about Web 3.0, they're like, we hate it. We don't trust artificial intelligence until they can get ChatGPT to write a paper for them. Then they love it. But they're like, we don't trust artificial intelligence. We don't want to be in virtual reality all the time. We don't want to be in a Ready Player One world where we're, you've got your headset on all the time. We don't like it. So that's the people who are in their teens and 20s right now are very resistant to Web 3.0. And because they're resistant to it, they're like, it's never going to succeed. What I tell them is, when you guys were kids and we had Web 1.0, we started talking about this idea of social media, this idea of we're going to be interacting all the time. I was like, what do you think your parents thought? They didn't like it. They thought it was going to be terrible. And they're like, no one's ever going to go for this. People want to actually interact with their neighbors and go outside. Lo and behold, 20 years later, everyone uses social media, everybody uses smartphones, we use streaming services, that's how we live. So, what I say to my students is, you guys are resistant to virtual reality and artificial intelligence, but my 5-year-old is playing Roblox like 24/7, and I look at it and I'm just like, this looks horrible. But she loves it. I was like, these kids who are growing up and are going to be immersed by Meta in a Web 3.0 world, they're going to be, and the same thing applies to artificial intelligence, they're going to grow up with artificial intelligence being something they just have. For us, adapting to it, for someone my age, your age, even 10 years younger, it seems like this horrible thing, and I don't want to deal with it. But the fact of the matter is, it's here. Younger generations are going to use it. We're going to have to figure out how to use it. So for me, artificial intelligence is, how do we figure out a way to make it useful and not completely take over what we're doing? So I had a discussion with Steve the other day. They were like, yeah, I don't want to use ChatGPT to write, but I don't mind using it to brainstorm. So basically, like, I'll talk to ChatGPT and I'm like, I need 7 ideas for something. I think that's useful. I think that makes sense. My hope is that AI doesn't become the full content creator as far as creating, again, being one foot in the comics industry, I'm very sensitive to like my artist friends who are like, we're going to get replaced by AI. And I do not like the sounds of that. But as far as using AI as like just another helpful tool, the same way I use Google Docs to collaborate, that doesn't sound so bad. Are we able to control this at all? No. The next generation is going to do what they're going to do, and we'll kind of have to go along for the ride. But I do see the positive and negative to AI.
I mean, not to overly speculate, but I mean, does social media strategy in Web 3.0, I mean, are we going to have to put up billboards in the metaverse with our stories on it? Or
probably. Yeah, I mean, I think it's unavoidable, is that we're going to have to figure out how to navigate virtual reality in the same way that, 10 years ago we had to figure out how to navigate Instagram, and 5 years ago we had to figure out, oh, well, now we have to do video for everything. I look at podcasts and the fact that podcasts used to be audio only. Now, if you don't have a video component to your podcast, you're kind of left behind. So you need to have some sort of video component. So any sort of technology that comes along, we've got to figure out ways to integrate it. So are we going to end up in a world that's, I always use Ready Player One as my shorthand. Are we going to end up in that world? Hopefully not. I doubt it just because people are so wary of it. But is virtual reality going to be a thing that you have to navigate to do your business? Probably. Yeah, it's probably going to be something you got to think about.
I have one more question for you, and then do you have time to take a couple of audience questions? We all would, I think, dream of a story going viral. I mean, is it purely luck, or is there strategy to have a viral moment on any of these platforms?
Viral moments, by definition, are something you can't plan for. Yeah. All you can do is produce the best content possible, and again, consistency. And the most frustrating thing that you're going to face is you think you've got the coolest, best content ever, and you're like, oh, this is going to go viral easy, and then it tanks. And then something you don't even think about, that you post 2 days later, goes viral. So what you need to do, again, I'm sorry to sound like a broken record, but consistency is key. As long as you keep producing quality content on a regular basis, at some point something is going to hit. And once something hits, people are paying attention to you for the next thing. Again, looking at my own history, like I was able to come up with viral content at Marvel? Not always. And we were Marvel. So like we were a pretty big brand with a pretty big footprint. And some stuff that we put out there fell completely flat and did not have any audience. But once we started regularly producing content, people were at least looking to what we were doing. And you're able to get hit. So again, I think it comes down to quality, always. That's a no-brainer. But consistency is really what will get you noticed, and eventually you get the first viral hit, and then people are going to be checking in on you every couple of days to see what you're doing next.
So we shouldn't do what Hilton did with the 10-minute TikTok for all. Well, this has been great. I'm going to open it up to audience questions before anyone can ask. We do not plan on dressing the same for more discussion. Yeah, fashion week of uniform.
So I'm not a teacher, I'm not a professor, but I do frequently speak to middle school and high school students about my broadcast journalism career. And I was talking to them about the importance of knowing their sources. I mean, as a former reporter, you always want to know your source, with a article, and you confirm those facts before you put the story out there. So I counsel them to truly know the source of whatever it is that they're so quick to repost or retweet, because I think that's such a dangerous thing, is to perpetuate false information. And so that's how bad information, how mistruths get out there. What's your advice? How do you counsel your students to just be wary? Like, retweet to your heart's content if you truly can trust and verify that source. How do you get through that issue with them?
It's a really good question, and it's something I talk about a lot. In my digital media class, I have a whole 2-class session on, I call it fake news, but I try to retrain them to not use the term fake news, and use the term misinformation or disinformation instead, because I think it's more technical. But I give the example of it. I say the fact that I'm just as guilty as anyone else. I have a journalism background as well. But if I see an article that confirms something I'm already saying, and because of algorithms on social media, you're always going to see articles that say hey, you're right. What you're thinking is what everybody else is thinking. What I try to caution them on is take a beat. It's really just a pacing thing. It's if you read an article, first of all, read the article. Don't read the headline and then share it. And again, I'm guilty of this myself. But you've got to read the article, and then I always point to them, I say, my wife is great at this. My wife is awesome about the fact that whenever I tell her, oh, honey, there's this great article that confirms everything I was saying about whatever, and she goes, have you read 2 other articles? Have you checked their sources? And my wife she got her college degree in theater, and I'm the journalist, and she's the one telling me to source check. So I use her as kind of a litmus test, but I tell my students, I go, the hardest thing as journalists in 2023 is finding this great piece of information and wanting to share it right away, because that's what we're trained to do on social media. The most important thing you can do to combat misinformation is do exactly what you were just talking about, and that is read the whole article, see if there are other articles that confirm it. I say if you have time, and this is what drives them nuts, because at this point they're like, man, this is taking me 10 minutes. And I'm like, yeah, take 10 minutes. It's not only read the article that confirms what you're saying, find an article with a counterpoint and see what they're saying. So basically, being a journalist, the long and short of what I give to them is being a journalist is exhausting, because you have to take the time to see every side of the story. If you're not seeing every side of the story before you post your thoughts, you're not doing the duty of a journalist. And I try not to portray it as a totally thankless job, because I don't want them to switch out of the journalism major, but I say what we're doing is important. What we're doing as journalists is important. And if it's going to be important and we're going to be spreading information to people, we have to take the time to actually do the work on our end, because our readers aren't necessarily going to do the work on their end. Does that make sense?
It does. And I wanted to say, the students confirm what you said. They are getting a lot, if not all, of their news information from TikTok.
Yeah.
It's the days of going to CNN or Fox or New York Times. Seems to be
they seem to be going away. Yeah, and I will say this is my hopeful note, this is my optimistic point, is that I always tell my students, I go, I think you guys are going to be the generation that defeats fake news, because I've noticed, it's honestly the people who share stuff without, not to throw them under the bus, the people that share stuff without confirming are usually my parents, my in-laws, older people, because the problem is, not even the problem, but they are used to saying like, oh, it's news, we can trust it, you know? Because they grew up in an era where if, you know, the nightly news was telling you something, you could trust it. And so they're just assuming like, well, this article I see on Facebook, I can trust it. The younger generation, college students and younger, are skeptical. They grew up in a world where they get lied to all the time. So they're actually doing a lot more fact-checking than you would think. Because they don't, it sounds horrible, they just don't trust people. But that's good, in a way. Because we don't want journalists to necessarily trust the first thing that they see. We want them to confirm, investigate. So that's just my optimistic note to end, that even though everyone's getting their news from TikTok, I think they're actually going to, you know, turn things around in terms of this disinformation era that we live in.
They sound like great future NAREE members.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
So, younger people do get their news from TikTok. I know my daughter does.
Right.
But working for a news organization, how does the news organization monetize?
Great question. And TikTok especially has not figured this out. TikTok, the thing we're looking at right now, we look at this in my class a lot, is that TikTok has not found a way to monetize for their creators. And if TikTok goes away in the next few years, that's going to be one. And that's just for content creators. Like, we're not even talking about journalists yet. So the question is, how do you monetize your TikTok following? Well, you have to point them somewhere else. You have to think of TikTok as a first step. How am I going to get people? And I struggled with this a lot. When I started in comics, I worked at a magazine called Wizard Magazine. It doesn't exist anymore. One of the reasons why was I went there in 2004, and my first day there was Comic Book Magazine. And they brought me in, they interviewed me, and they said, do you have any questions for us? And I said, what are your plans for the internet? And they said, oh, we're not too worried about the internet. Like, they basically treated the internet like it was another rival magazine that they were going to shut down shortly. And I was like, I can't be here for very long. I need to move on. It's the same thing with TikTok and news journalism. You can't ignore TikTok just because it's not a pure monetization machine, but you have to look at it as, if I'm a news organization, how can I use TikTok as the first step in a conversation that's going to bring you to my website for more insight, that's going to bring you to my publication. So it's more like, you can't think of TikTok as, I'm telling a complete story on TikTok. Because for now, it's not going to make you money. You have to think of TikTok as, you mentioned billboards earlier. Think of TikTok as a billboard. TikTok is where you're giving a bite-sized like tease of your story and trying to get them to where you are. Now, in the next few years, the problem is things are moving further away from, now everything's on social media, like this gentleman said, everything's on social media. TikTok is going to have to find a way to monetarily compensate their creators, or they're not going to survive. If you look at Instagram or YouTube right now, they're great as far as advertising and finding ways to reward their successful content creators. If TikTok is not able to do that, as even though TikTok seems too big to fail right now, they will fail if they don't find a way to monetize for their creators. So it's not really on you to figure out how to monetize, it's on you to figure out how to get your TikTok audience to a place where you can monetize. And if people are staying exclusively on TikTok, it's kind of up to them to figure out how to make you money in the next few years. And we'll see what happens with that. That's a really good question.
Robin?
This is a great panel, thank you so much. I have two questions. One is, if you do have like a post or something that goes viral, is there a way to sort of like capitalize on that moment? Like, you say it's unexpected, but is there a way to like build on it? Like, you know, bring more people to you, or bring it, keep it going? Is there like a secret sauce to?
I know you want the answer to be yes, but probably no. The answer is, if I go viral one time, then people are going to be watching what I do next to see if I'm going to go viral again. But there's so many factors that go into going viral. It's the algorithm, it's what people are into that day. If you try to plan something that's going to go viral, it won't. It just won't happen. I had a client with the media group who her whole goal was to be an influencer. And she was basically, this is the worst client I ever had, I'm not going to name names. But it was the most frustrating client I ever had, because she was literally every week talking to me and my students, my 20-something students who were working their butts off trying to get people to go to her Instagram page, and she's like, why am I not an influencer yet? And we're like, there's no path to becoming an influencer. The way you become an influencer is you consistently put out quality content and people eventually know to come to you on a regular basis. With viral posts, it's the same thing. If you are lucky enough to get a viral post, what I notice a lot, I see it on Twitter, when somebody goes viral, I'll see them capitalize on the moment of saying like, hey, I know I've got a lot of eyes right now. Here are all the other places you can follow me. Here's where my content is. Here's a project I'm working on. So maybe use that moment that you're viral to promote. But the problem is a week later, are you still gonna have all those eyeballs? Maybe, but probably not. So you've gotta really capitalize on the moment. You've got a brief window where you're capturing a lot of eyeballs, and you want to utilize that as much as possible. But there's no formula of, oh, well, this went viral, so if I do the same thing next week, it'll go viral again. No, like people have a short attention span. If you keep repeating yourself, they're not going to keep listening, unfortunately.
Can I get my second question?
Absolutely.
So the second question is, I mean, how strictly do you need to kind of stick to a brand? Like as a journalist, I have my stories, but it's like, but then also sometimes I'm just in an interesting place, like Las Vegas, and I want to post pictures. Like how much do you need to sort of stay on brand identity of like who you are, or can you sort of just be yourself? Like is it?
It depends on what you're doing. So Marvel is owned by Disney. So when I was at Marvel, there was no way I was sharing like my personal views on a lot of things because what I said reflected on the company. Now that I'm a private citizen, I'm a lot more open with that stuff. So it depends on what you're doing. I also say that I have my personal account, my personal brand, and then I have like my business brands. So you can work both sides. You can kind of show your personality and then kind of cross-post. The thing I would say is on your personal page, you can say, here's the sights of Las Vegas, here's stuff I'm really enjoying, because people want to know you as a person. They want to think of you as a person and not just a screen name. But then you point them towards, and here's what I'm doing over on the journalistic side. It's not really a two-way street. You're not on your journalistic account going to then say, and check out these pictures of me, at the casino. It's kind of like you use your personal brand to promote what you're doing professionally, but what you're doing professionally should be pretty focused and targeted to what you're trying to do. If that makes sense.
That does.
You got time for one? Yeah.
Whenever I do like a Twitter thread, I always feel like I'm giving away reporting to a degree, especially because I'm working for a publication that is behind the wall.
Right.
How do you sort of square those two things? Sort of like advice on how to, maybe advance the goal of getting people to subscribe and pay for your content as opposed to, but also like get them satisfied on that front.
It's a good question. I think with journalism, think of it this way. Twitter's your headline. Twitter's your subhead. That's where you're going to grab someone's attention and basically say like, hey, here's a little bit of value. If you want the full thing, it's like, how can I use that to tease what I'm doing on a larger basis? It's tough though, because honestly, I talk about this all the time. We give so much away for free in a social media landscape. Like I always say, not to flip over to my other topic, but with podcasting, people try to put podcasts behind a paywall. It never works because there are thousands of podcasts I can listen to for free. Why am I going to pay to listen to your specific podcast? So in that regard, it's like, well, if the full story is on Twitter, then why am I going to get people to pay to see more? But I think the nature of humans is if we're intrigued by, if you give me the first paragraph free, and then you say to read more, you gotta go behind the paywall, that might work, but you have to give something substantial on Twitter. You can't just say, here's a sentence, and then I want you to pay for the rest of it. It's a balancing act, you know what I mean? It's like your value proposition has to be, I'm giving you enough that you feel like you're getting something, but I'm not giving you everything. And it's what journalists have been wrestling with for years and years and years. Like, how do I get someone to pay for something when they can get it for free? And the answer is just like, do the best you can, and then give them something, but not everything. It's tough. I wish I had a better answer for you. Like, it's one of the hardest things to do is balancing free content versus paid content in the world we live in.
We can do quickly one more.
On this topic,
Yeah.
publications, newspapers in particular, are not providing the pay option for just that piece. They're saying if you want to read this article, you will have to subscribe to the paper for at least a month, or it's going to bill you automatically. You might have a challenge ending it. So why not do the pay per piece model? At least as far as social media is concerned.
So you're saying, as opposed to being like, you have to subscribe to everything, instead we're just gonna give you kind of a, like, pay for what you want, like pick and choose type of thing?
Why does it have to be all or nothing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's because that's what old media is used to, is, selling a full newspaper. We're not used to, even now, even in 2023, a lot of people in journalism who are remembering like, well, if you have to buy the newspaper, you have to buy the magazine. And I think you make a really good point that we live in a world now where, consumers are used to being able to pick and choose what they want to read. And I am more of the mind that a better model than you have to, jump behind this paywall. I agree with what you're saying. If I produce a quality piece and you pay for just that piece, odds are you're going to look for more from me. So I can build a relationship with that. So I think the kind of like pay piece by piece strategy makes a lot more sense. But I've noticed just in working with journalists and other people, a lot of people are still, very set in the way of old media, which is all or nothing. But I think that the kind of piecemeal approach is not only the future, it's kind of where we are now. It's how people consume content in this day and age. So I think it's something people are going to have to get used to. But I think it's challenging for people who've been doing things one way for years and years.
Even old media has single copy.
Sure.
option.
Yeah, I think we just got to look at it that way. Yeah.
Single copy for 25 cents or $1.50 in today's terms.
Yeah.
Maybe you charge $1 or $1.50 per piece, and you're making the same money.
I think you figured it out. You should run media.
I look at that, but no.
Well, on that note, we will
Yeah.
end. Ben, thank you so much for
Yeah, man.
joining us.